Domestic violence. It has become an increasingly deadly problem across Central Florida. But people in positions of power are taking notice and looking for solutions.
We cannot tolerate the degree of domestic violence in this community.
A series of high-profile domestic violence killings over the last 2 years have forced community leaders, law enforcement, and victims advocates to confront the issue head-on.
As a community, we have seen entirely too many senseless killings, and it's time that we say that enough is enough.
Tonight, Channel 9 digs deeper into Central Florida's domestic violence crisis.
Welcome to WFTV's 9 Family Connection special, focusing on how many in our community are trying to eliminate domestic violence and prevent more killings.
During a 3-month span last year, more than 12 people were killed in domestic violence attacks across Central Florida. Orange County alone had 17 domestic violence-related deaths during 2012, and another 21 attributed to domestic violence in 2011.
2 separate shootings that drew the most attention last year, however, occurred inside an International Drive hotel and a Castleberry salon.
Channel 9's Jeff Deal was there to report on Michele Polonice's rampage in late September. Polonice shot and killed his estranged girlfriend and a co-worker at a hotel in the tourist corridor. And then he attempted to kill his ex's best friend before turning the gun on himself, as Jeff Deal explained in this chilling story.
In late September, this fiery crash in Pine Hills ended a morning of terror and violence. Sky Witness 9 HD showed the flames just after 33-year-old Michele Polonice crashed his car along Powers Drive near Sunshine Street. Moments earlier, deputies had followed in a short, slow-speed pursuit. Polonice had his windows rolled down, and a deputy saw him shoot himself just before the crash.
Something to his right temple. It appeared to be a muzzle flash, and shortly thereafter, he crashed.
It started just before 8 a.m. at the Quality Suites near I Drive. Polonice showed up with a gun and shot his estranged ex-girlfriend Carlene Pierre at her work and another woman, Vanessa Gonzalez Orianes, killing them both. But he didn't stop with them. Leaving Quality Suites, it appears he went directly to the Westgate Lakes Resort a few miles down the road on Turkey Lake. He shot another woman, Jean Gerline, a friend of his ex-girlfriend. In Orange County, Jeff Deal, Eyewitness News.
The very next month, violence erupted again when Bradford Beaumet killed his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend, took his car, and then opened fire inside a Castleberry hair salon. Beaumet killed 3 women inside that salon and seriously injured his ex, Marcia Santiago. She survived the shooting, and Beaumet later killed himself at a friend's home. As Channel 9's Kathy Belich first reported.
Just after 11 o'clock in the morning on October 18th last year, 36-year-old Bradford Beaumet walked into the Dominicana salon in Castleberry and opened fire on the 8 people inside, customers and employees. This man's wife, 52-year-old Gladys Cabrera, and his daughter were customers. His daughter got out alive. His wife did not. He got so upset he needed heart treatment, but later returned to the scene and comforted his distraught daughter. 28-year-old employee Noelia Gonzalez, whom relatives say was pregnant, was also murdered. 3 other women escaped harm. 1 hid in a bathroom, and another ran out the back door. 44-year-old Marcia Santiago, the gunman's ex-girlfriend, was shot and critically wounded, but she has survived. Beaumet's relatives told Channel 9 the day of the deadly shooting that they had warned Santiago he was dangerous. They were overcome by emotion as they spoke in their native tongue, and we translated. Santiago and Beaumet were to meet in court later that day so a judge could determine whether to make Santiago's temporary injunction to keep Beaumet away from her permanent. He had threatened to kill her 2 weeks earlier, and she had to lock him out of the salon. Orange and Osceola County judges have now started ordering GPS monitoring in some domestic violence cases involving violence or threats of violence or suicide. So far, 11 men have been ordered on GPS monitors. Kathy Belich, Eyewitness News.
With these tragic examples of domestic violence dominating the news, early this year, Orange County Mayor Teresa Jacobs announced the newly reformed Domestic Violence Commission.
As Mark Joyella explained, some troubling statistics compelled these local leaders to act.
As a community, we have seen entirely too many senseless killings, and it's time that we say that enough is enough.
Circuit Judge Alice Blackwell determined to do better after a recent Harbor House study found 27 people died from domestic violence in 2011. That averages to about one person every 2 weeks.
You know, we look at situations like Sandy Hook and you think, how can you predict? How can you predict? In most of these domestic violence cases, you definitely can see it coming.
Members of Orange County's Domestic Violence Commission reconvened in January, saying they wanted to look for new ways to better protect victims and to move faster. By the time victims turn to the courts, often the danger has reached its peak. That's exactly what happened to Janelle Sharpton, who got a restraining order against her husband after an incident last Christmas Day. Detectives say he ignored that order, forced his way into her home just weeks later, and stabbed her repeatedly. In Orlando, Mark Gioiella, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
It's encouraging to see our leaders working to address this problem, which has seemed out of control at times. When we come back from the break, we'll hear more about the new GPS system designed to prevent the deadly domestic violence-related killings we've heard all too much about. One such effort uses GPS technology to let victims and law enforcement know whether abusers are approaching those they've attacked in the past.
Channel 9's Dinesh Broom learned that judges here in the 9th Judicial Circuit Court began ordering the use of global positioning monitoring devices in conjunction with final injunctions for protection in certain domestic violence cases.
Judge Belvin Perry says since he was a prosecutor in the 70s, he's seen the vast majority of domestic violence victims decide not to file charges out of fear because of what they've seen.
And you see someone gets an injunction, and you see that they end up dead, then you may have someone say, well, dead versus a beating, which one would I rather have?
Perry says based on questionnaires about the accused, judges will decide who should be tracked.
Is there a history of someone being convicted? Is there a history of someone being violent? Is there a history of mental health issues or substance abuse?
He says those red flags are good indicators there could be a threat.
If you go back and you look at the cases that we've had here in this community where injunctions have been issued and the person went out and killed someone, 9 times out of 10 they fit within that category.
If an offender gets within 500 feet of the victim, they could be arrested and that victim would be warned. Dinesh Broom, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Chief Judge Belvin Perry also sat down with WFTV's Greg Wormuth on Central Florida Spotlight to discuss the effort to stop the violence.
This has been on the drawing board for more than 2 years. We've had numerous discussions with judges about court orders not being followed, i.e., do not have any contact with the victim, nor commit any acts of violence upon the victim. In the cases that we've looked at, the victims had absolutely no warning that the perpetrator, the person who had the injunction issued against them, were about to attack them. With the use of this technology, there are 2 zones. There's a buffer zone of 2,500 feet, and there is another zone of 500 feet. If the person goes into the buffer zone, then there is a warning given to the victim via cell phone to implement their safety plan, and law enforcement is dispatched. And of course, if the person goes into the exclusionary zone, they are arrested by law enforcement.
Judge Perry explained that using GPS devices in domestic violence cases here in the 9th Judicial Circuit is a first for Florida and probably the whole nation.
And when we asked Judge Perry if ordering someone not formally charged with a crime to wear that device and whether or not it raised any constitutional issues, he told us the program was firm on legal ground. He said the courts have an obligation to protect victims of domestic violence.
What better protection than the petitioner having forewarning that this person is coming there in violation of a court order?
The GPS program may go a long way toward helping ensure the safety of domestic violence victims who get injunctions against their abusers.
In case after tragic case, we've learned that the most violent and deadly attackers often have a documented history of threats and abuse against their victims. In the Bradford Beaumet case, both his ex-girlfriend and her employer had filed injunctions against him, as Channel 9's Ryan Hughes reported.
There was great fear that this man would try to harm his ex-girlfriend and others around her, so much so that Marcia Santiago and her employer, Eugenia Marte, both filed injunctions against Bradford Beaumet to keep him away from the beauty salon where they worked. We got Marte's injunction in which she wrote, "He showed up at my business and threatened me, punching the glass door." At the time she filed the injunction, he'd already been there 2 times. She wrote in broken English, "He keep call to my business and keeping threatening me. Now he threatens my husband that he going to kill my husband too." The shooter's own cousin told us she'd warned Marcia Santiago to stay away.
My cousin, he's been having problems. He's mentally not there. We've been telling them, just keep away from him. Keep away from him.
A man who lives in the home where the shooter killed himself seemed to sum up what many felt that day.
Innocent people are dead.
Ryan Hughes, Channel 9 Eyewitness.